Casey, the event organizer and referee, asked me about how my electronics are set up. He pointed out that I don't have Hey builders, it's Tyler of Team Cryptid Robotics. Last week I told you guys all about how I got a brand new weapon assembly for Hodag that fixed its weapon durability issues, but we ran into some new electrical issues with one copy of Hodag having its drive ESC basically just turn off, and on the other copy of Hodag it would completely lose connection to the receiver or the transmitter, however you want to word it. In both cases I ended up getting control back shortly after, but in some cases I got counted out and lost, while others I was able to come back and win. And with another event 2 weeks after that one, I really needed to figure out those issues. Luckily I did have some tricks up my sleeve, so I'll let myself from in between those 2 weeks explain to you what I did. I don't have much time to record, but let's go over the changes that I made to fix the brownout issues. And remember that this one is the Cheese Muncher Hodag. So this, I'd put a sticker on it to tell the difference. This was the one where when it turned off, I still had control of the weapon. So I still had receiver power. So I'm suspecting it's mostly has to do with the ESC. And for this one, we're going to call the Repeat Robotics Hodag. This one, the whole thing completely turned off. I checked all of the connections for the ESC, and I kind of redid some of the insulation on some of them and some of the hot glue that I did. I switched out the switches on both of them. I got any dust out. I checked the connections that go to the receiver, and I taped them up with Gorilla Tape instead of electrical tape and made sure that the antennas don't come off. This one was on fine, but I noticed the antenna on this one came off, but that would not explain the ESC issues I was having with this one. I do have an extra ESC on hand, so if this one ends up dying again, I will switch out the ESC. I forgot to mention this in the previous video, so I'll mention it here, but the electrical issues I had all throughout the Duluth event is probably the same issue I had at the last RSL in the fight against Skippy, where the robot turned off for no reason, but was then working when I put it in the test box. So maybe I should have explored that more and possibly prevented what happened in Duluth, but here we are. I also checked the tires and everything to make sure I had clearance where I needed clearance, and I didn't notice anything there. I made changes on the controller itself, just a couple settings for the radio connection to hopefully make it more in line. I basically double checked what the settings for the ER4 receiver are and sort of switch the settings accordingly, and I also increased the baud rate to hopefully help it stay connected better. And I also changed some settings for the drive to make it not accelerate so aggressively when I push up on the throttle, so I don't run into any like torque limiting situations and reduce the odds of that being the problem. Hopefully this fixes it. I wasn't really able to test it because I wasn't able to recreate the problem. So we're just going to have to hope one of the many things I did work. So I tested all these electrical fixes up at RSL in Hastings. Those that follow the channel will be familiar with Robot Smashing League since I go there a lot, since they're one of the closest events for me. Normally this is where I'd throw it to future me, but since I'm recording most of this after the fact, I'm just going to ask you guys to subscribe if you haven't already. And without further ado, let's get into it. So our first fight of the day is against a four-wheel drive undercutter called Spinnage. It's a jolt kit. And since Hodag has a pretty good record against horizontal spinners, and it's a relatively inexperienced team, I'm feeling pretty confident that we can get a win to start out the day.
2, 1, go!
The driver of this robot is just a kid, and it's really early into the match, so I knocked them down the first 2 times because I'm feeling pretty confident too that I'm going to win anyways, and I want to, actually give them a chance to fight. As you can see, the drive gives out as well as, but I still have control of the weapon. Luckily, it seems to come to life just in time for me not to get counted out. I end up leaving them hanging the third time they get stuck because I got pretty concerned after the brownout I had in the middle of the fight. Plus, the fight has gone out long enough that I tend to leave bots no matter what if they get stuck in the second half of the fight. I almost forgot to mention that I realized after this fight that I didn't assemble Hodag properly and I didn't use all the screws I was supposed to. For the back part of the robot, there's actually only 2 screws keeping it attached to the base plate, and one of those screws was like partially backed out after this fight, so that could have been bad, but luckily nothing bad happened. They pretty much weren't able to do any damage to my wedge with their weapon, and with the geometry of Hodag, I was able to control them pretty well, and they kept getting stuck in all sorts of different positions, so it was a really easy fight for me. After that fight, Casey, the event organizer and referee, also the driver of Variant, asked me about how my electronics are set up, and Hodag has 2 separate batteries, one for the servo that does the punching and the spinner, and a separate battery that controls the drive and powers the receiver. He pointed out that I don't have a ground that goes between the 2 batteries, so they don't share a ground, and that ground is essentially shared at the receiver. That's the only place that, and I'm not sure if the receiver is wired in a way that would properly like put all of the grounds together. So after that fight, I end up soldering a wire that between the 2 grounds for both the batteries, so that way they share a common ground. Maybe that'll help, we'll see. It's also after this fight that it's becoming very apparent that when I have the issue where the drive goes down but I still have control of the weapon, it is when the weapon comes in contact with my opponent in an even halfway decently large hit, indicating that this is occurring when there is a current spike on the weapon side of the circuit, which makes it really peculiar that the opposite side is the side that goes down. I forgot to verbally mention this before, but in the first fight, I used the Repeat Robotics copy of Hodag, and my plan is to continue using that copy throughout the day because I want to focus on troubleshooting that single copy of Hodag as opposed to trying to troubleshoot both at the same time. Which brings us into our next fight against Tomahawk 2.0, which is a 2-wheel drive beater bar. I don't exactly have the best record against beater bars, and since it's a little bit more seasoned bot, I'm a little bit more intimidated than our last fight, but we'll see how it goes.
1, go!
So at least this time we know why it turned off. I didn't have enough slack going between the power switch and the drive ESC. So when it got hit, it pretty much just pulled out because it was too tight and not enough slack. So when I put it back together, I need to just resolder it and make sure there's more slack going between there. Other than that, not much was able to happen, so there isn't really much to evaluate based on driving. Oh, I feel like I should mention that they bent one of the shafts for the linear mechanism, and which is the first time that happened since I got the larger shafts. So that does mean that the larger shafts aren't immune from being bent, but it does take more for them to bend. But with us going 1-1, our third match fight ended up being forfeited by the opponent. So for the sake of the modified Swiss, we are 2-1, which means if we win our fourth fight, I guess third actual fight, but we'll end up making it to the single elimination bracket. We're pitted against another 2-wheel drive beater bar called Skippy, If you've followed Hodag at all, you've probably heard of them because we've fought them twice at RSL now, and they've beaten us the last 2 times we fought them. So I'm feeling a little bit worried going into this one.
3, 2, 1, go!
So the moment I actually put Hodag in the box, I noticed that the drive was messed up and it was binding on one side, and I just decided to roll with it. So that's why Hodag is driving that way. Something was binding, and I actually ended up just using the other version of Hodag, the Cheese Muncher version, after this fight. And I should mention that MRCA rules, or at least in RSL, runs things in a way that the moment a robot starts on fire, the match ends and it's pretty much a TKO. And I was willing to take that win, even though it obviously sucks to have his bot on fire. But last time we fought, my robot stopped for no reason and my drive was all jacked up going into that fight. So I guess a win's a win. But with that win, we ended up going into the single elimination bracket. Our first fight of the single elimination bracket is against a 4-wheel drive dual disc spinner called Starting Bonus. It has been on a tear all day. It was undefeated going into this fight and was winning pretty handedly, so I'm feeling pretty intimidated going into this one.
2, 1, go!
So we started out pretty good in that fight. The fork configuration was doing exactly what it was supposed to. I was driving halfway decently, even though it wasn't quite driving perfectly straight, at least as straight as I'd want it to. More on that later. But ultimately, we ended up getting knocked out because we pretty much didn't have either side driving, and it wasn't because of electrical issues. The one side I could tell during the fight, but it might be difficult during the recorded footage. But the belt that goes from the rear wheel to the front wheel, it came off of the front wheel and got wrapped around the rear wheel, so that wasn't really able to turn. And on the other side, the set screw for the drive backed out enough, so it was basically the motor was turning, but it wasn't really engaging with the wheel at all. Obviously, after that event, tightened those screws and thread locked them. Ultimately, I don't feel terrible at how that fight went. Because that bot went on to win the entire day, and so doing as well as I did felt pretty good. And the stuff that went wrong, I can prevent in the future event. So overall, a much better day than Duluth, even though we technically had the same record, going 2-2. If you exclude the forfeit that happened, because I don't like to count those because I never got to fight them, so it doesn't really reflect on how my robot's doing. And with this event concluded, I had another event the very next weekend. So between the two events, I had to fix the grounding issue on the other copy because I only added that grounding wire to the Repeat Robotics copy, and I had to do it to the Cheese Muncher. Even though it did fight in a fight, I didn't have that extra grounding wire. Just so, because that seemed to work better. I want to keep that consistent between the two copies. And also, throughout that event, and even in previous events, Hodag never really drove as straight as I would like it to. And I had an idea to make it drive straighter, but you're going to have to wait until the next video when I talk about that event to hear about what I did to make Hodag drive straighter. Thanks for watching. If you want to see the first version of Hodag, that video is on screen now.